we all know hurricanes are these massive, powerful forces of nature, right? But here's the thing. For all our modern technology, there's this one huge mystery that forecasters just haven't been able to crack. So let's get into it. It's this question right here. Why do some hurricanes just explode in strength out of nowhere? What's the secret sauce that turns a pretty standard storm into an absolute monster, sometimes literally overnight? This sudden power-up is the most dangerous part of a hurricane, and figuring it out, well, that's kind of the holy grail for weather scientists. And there's a name for this, of course. Scientists call it rapid intensification, or RI for short. Just think about it. A storm's wind speed jumping by at least 35 miles per hour in just 24 hours. That is a massive leap. It's the difference between a storm you prepare for and a true catastrophe that catches everyone off guard. And get this, it's not some rare fluke. A whopping 83% of the most dangerous hurricanes, we're talking the big ones, Category 4 and 5, they all go through this rapid intensification. So it's pretty clear, right? If we can finally crack the code on RI, we can get way better at predicting the absolute worst storms. Okay, so that brings us to some really fascinating new research. Scientists have come up with a brand new tool, a totally different way of simulating storms that might just be the breakthrough we've been looking for. It's a method called action minimization. Now, the old way was kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. You just run tons of random simulations and hope one of them accidentally shows you a monster storm. But this new tool, it's way smarter. It actively hunts for the most efficient, most likely physical path, the secret recipe, really, that a storm would take to become a beast. So how does it actually do that? Well, the best analogy I've heard is to think of it like one of those guides they put up for kids when they're bowling. You start with a computer model of a real, moderate hurricane. Then, the program applies these tiny, physically realistic nudges to the weather. We're talking small tweaks to heat, wind, and moisture. The genius part is that the algorithm figures out the perfect sequence of these nudges to guide the storm step by step straight toward its maximum possible intensity. It's not random, it's guided. And yeah, the researchers themselves said it best. The goal isn't just to crank up the numbers for fun, it's to find a believable path, a trajectory, as they call it, that leads to the lowest possible air pressure, which is the key sign of a super intense hurricane, while making sure everything stays, physically realistic. So a cool idea, right? But does it actually work? Well, a tool like this is only as good as its results. So the next step was obvious. They had to put it to the test with some real-world hurricanes and see if they could actually make them go from strong to even stronger. So meet our test subjects, Hurricane Danny from 2015 and Hurricane Fred from 2009. Now, both of these were already pretty beefy Category 3 storms, and importantly, they stayed out over the open ocean, which makes them perfect, almost lab-like conditions for this kind of digital experiment. Okay, let's check out the results for Hurricane Danny. So on this chart, you're looking at air pressure on the vertical axis. And for hurricanes, remember, lower is always stronger. The bottom axis is just time passing. Now, that blue line? That's what a normal simulation predicted. But check out the orange line. Whoa, that's the storm being guided by this new tool. See how around the 20-hour mark, it just takes a nosedive? It plunges to a way, way lower pressure? That's it. The algorithm did it. It created a much more intense storm right there in the simulation. And the result was just undeniable. Those little nudges from the algorithm successfully pushed both storms up from a solid Category 3 all the way into scary Category 4 territory. Now let's switch over to wind speed for Hurricane Fred. Same story here. Blue line is the standard prediction, orange line is our guided storm. And man, just follow that orange line. You see that massive jump in wind speed? It blows right past that 35 mile per hour in 24 hours threshold we were talking about. This is the key part. The tool didn't just stumble upon rapid intensification, it actively created the perfect conditions for it to happen. Okay, so we know it works. But the big question is, how? What exactly were those tiny nudges? This is where the tool gets really powerful, because it doesn't just spit out a final number. It actually shows us the step-by-step physical recipe for cooking up a monster storm. And by looking back at all the nudges it made, the algorithm basically wrote down its own recipe. It turns out there are three main ingredients. First, adding heat, but strategically, in very specific places. Second, calming down those disruptive high-altitude winds. That's called reducing wind shear. And third, it injected more moisture, which is basically the gasoline for a hurricane's engine.
the way it added heat was really, really clever. Instead of just, cranking up the heat in the middle of the storm, the algorithm added warmth in these rings outside the core. Yeah, this graph looks a little complicated. It's called a wave number decomposition, but what it's really showing us is that the heat wasn't just dumped in one spot, it was added asymmetrically in these waves. And what happens then? The storm's own spin pulls that warm, energized air inward, supercharging the core from the inside out. Pretty smart, right?
Okay, next up, wind shear. The easiest way to think about it is like trying to build a really tall tower of blocks in a crosswind. It's just not gonna work. High wind shear does the same thing to a hurricane. It tilts it over and tears it apart, making it weaker. So what the algorithm figured out was exactly how to apply nudges to calm that wind down, to reduce the shear, and let the storm grow straight up, becoming way more organized and powerful.
And boom, this graph shows you exactly that. The vertical axis is basically how much the storm is tilted. Look at the blue line, the regular storm. It's tilted over for a long time. But then look at the orange line. The algorithm's nudges help the storm stand up straight, becoming way more upright and stable. And a stable storm is a powerful storm.
So let's zoom out. What's the big picture here? Why is this tool such a potential game changer? It's really about more than just getting a better forecast number. It's about finally understanding the why behind the what. First off, it's just so much more efficient. We're talking at least a 10 times savings in computer power, according to the researchers. That is a massive leap forward. It means we can study these really rare but incredibly dangerous events so much more easily. And this chart just nails that point home. All those blue bars, that's what you get from running hundreds of random simulations. Most of them, just cluster around the average outcome. But see that one little red cross way over on the left? That is the super intense, super rare storm that our new tool found in one single shot. To find that same needle in the haystack by chance, you'd probably need to run over 400 simulations. It's an incredible shortcut. And honestly, that brings us to the most important part of all of this. This tool takes us beyond just predicting if a storm will get strong. It helps us understand the precise physical recipe, that perfect mix of heat, wind, and moisture for how it gets so strong. It's like the difference between just knowing the final score of a game and having the other team's entire playbook. And having that playbook, that's what could give forecasters the confidence to issue warnings sooner and save lives. And that really leaves us with a pretty big final question, doesn't it? We know our climate is changing, and that means the rules for extreme weather are changing too. So could tools like this one be the key? Not just for predicting the storms of tomorrow, but for actually understanding the new physics that will be driving them.